My name is Elizabeth Lee. I am a longtime parishioner and former senior warden at Grace Church, Georgetown. With me this morning are the Reverend Canon Andrew Walter, Canon to the Ordinary and Chief Operating Officer of the Diocese of Washington, and Rowan Larson, a candidate for Holy Orders in the Diocese of Massachusetts and Formation Minister at Grace Episcopal Church in Newton, Mass., who is serving as digital host for the School for Christian Faith and Leadership. Thank you, Andrew and Rowan. I want to start this morning with a prayer. Rowan, that's the first slide on this in the deck. Let us pray. Almighty God, we pray that you will bless our work in mission and ministry in the world. Help us to pray fervently, labor diligently, and give liberally to make known the power of your love given through your Son, Jesus Christ. Let us not forget the lessons from the past, nor fear the challenges of the future. Anoint us with your grace and shine in our hearts as we reflect your light throughout the world. Amen. Before we get started, we're going to do a quick Zoom poll so you can see the makeup of the 50 plus attendees today. A great mix. So we have pretty evenly split between junior and senior wardens, and a significant number of you who are really new to your jobs, with then about a third who are in the 1 to 3 year range, and some senior folks who can help to bring some additional wisdom to our conversations later today. Thank you for that, Rowan. If you're like me, you came to the job of warden with a lot of experience and involvement in your parish, but not a lot of conversation about the job description. I'm a cradle Episcopalian and grew up in a family of church leaders. When I agreed to stand for election to senior warden, I had been at Grace for over 20 years, served multiple terms on the vestry under 2 different rectors, and had a close relationship with our current rector. I served as legal advisor to the vestry on multiple occasions, so I had seen up close the workings of the vestry and the executive committee. I was privileged to serve as the senior warden at Grace for 2 two-year terms between 2015 and 2019. During that time, we completed a major restoration of the stonework on the exterior of the church without going into debt, and celebrated the 150th anniversary of Grace's founding in Georgetown. On February 2nd, 2019, at the start of my final year as senior warden, I was in Vancouver, British Columbia for a meeting when I received a phone call from my friend and former senior warden, John Safarian. John informed me that our rector, John Graham, had a medical incident and was in intensive care at GW Medical Center. I was still processing the news that our beloved rector was critically ill when John's next statement almost knocked me off my feet. Beth, pursuant to the canons of the church, you're now in charge of the parish in John's absence. I should have known that. I had been on the job already for 3 years, but I didn't. We hadn't spent any time talking about division of responsibilities between rector and vestry or rector and wardens. Our administrative staff is part-time, and our rector oversaw most of the administration of the parish. I was fortunate in that we had a part-time assistant rector who could step in and provide pastoral care, but now I was charged with making sure our worship services continued, that parish administrative matters were addressed, and with dealing with things like short-term and long-term disability claims and the church pension fund. How do you find supply clergy? Congregations are required to continue to pay clergy during disability, which we were all really concerned about being able to do. How would we continue to pay our rector and pay supply clergy? How do you plan for continuity when you don't know how long your rector is going to be on leave? And in the early days, we didn't know if John was going to be able to come back at all. I called Church House. Bishop Marianne and the diocesan staff were incredible in helping us find the resources we needed and in supporting me, our executive committee and vestry, and the entire congregation during the 8 months John was on leave. I learned about waiting periods before short-term disability kicks in, and that short-term disability payments are paid to the parish and thus available to pay supply clergy. Grace is a small parish and operates on a very tight budget. We were fortunate to have the resources to cover dual expenses until the short-term disability payments commenced. For me, it highlighted the importance of having reserves or a contingency fund to cover this type of emergency, and for planning the unimaginable. So that's my story. The role of a warden differs from parish to parish, depending upon the traditions and culture of the congregation, the personality and leadership style of the rector, the personality of the wardens, and the needs of the community at any given time. This flexibility allows the rectors and wardens to adapt to the unique gifts each person brings to the table. Our purpose today is to give you some foundational information and resources for ministries as the lay leaders of your congregations. The diocese has a great toolbox for wardens, which can be found on the School for Christian Faith and Leadership website, which is this next slide on the deck, Rowan. A vast majority of the information we're going to talk about today is available in some form in the toolbox, including the Canons of the Episcopal Church and the Episcopal Diocese of Washington, sample job descriptions for senior and junior wardens, a resource list of who to contact in the diocese, and that you should print and put next to your pillow, and a link to the website of the Episcopal Church Foundation, Vital Practices for Leading Congregations website, which has a number of really great resources for congregations and vestries and wardens. I commend it to you. The relationship and the respective responsibilities of clergy, wardens, and vestry is grounded in the canons of the Episcopal Church and the Episcopal Diocese of Washington. We are a hierarchical but democratically governed church. All major decisions affecting the life of the Episcopal Church are made jointly by lay people, clergy, and bishops. Parishes elect a vestry to govern the affairs of the parish in conjunction with the rector, who is sought and elected by the vestry. Parishes also elect lay delegates to attend an annual diocesan convention with all the diocese's clergy and bishops. Diocesan conventions vote on the major policy decisions of the diocese, set the budget for the diocese, and at times make statements about issues in the church and in civil society. Diocesan conventions also elect bishops to help lead their diocese. Diocesan conventions, in turn, elect deputies as members of the House of Deputies of the Episcopal Church's Triennial General Convention. The General Convention sets the mission priorities, budget, and policies of the Episcopal Church for the next 3 years. It approves changes to the Church's constitution and canons and broadly defines the standards of worship. The 2018 Constitution and canons of the General Convention of the Episcopal Church creates a shared authority between lay leaders, wardens and vestry on the one hand, and clergy on the other, for the oversight of each parish. The rector is given responsibility for worship and the spiritual life of the congregation. The wardens and vestry are charged with the legal oversight of the parish, its finances and property, and the relations of the parish to its clergy. This slide is the canon itself. There are two canons, and these are the only two key canons in the canons of the Episcopal Church that govern vestries and the role of the rector. So they specify that, except as provided by the laws of the state, some of which have govern incorporated religious nonprofit organizations, the vestry shall be the agents and legal representatives of the parish in all matters concerning its corporate property and the relations of the parish to its clergy, and that the rector shall preside at the meetings of the vestry. In Canon 3, it specifies that the rector or priest in charge shall have full authority and responsibility for the conduct of this worship and spiritual jurisdiction of the parish, subject to the rubrics of the Book of Common Prayer, the constitutions and canons of the church, and the pastoral direction of the bishop. So that's the umbrella canon. And then we go to the canons of the diocese, which really focus on, which prescribe what is supposed to be in the parish's bylaws. So the parish bylaws are the governing rules for your parish and create the legal standards for how the church is operated as an entity. As wardens, you need to be intimately familiar with the bylaws and to make sure that they're kept up to date. The canons of the Episcopal Diocese of Washington prescribe what may be in each parish's bylaws and what must be in them. Note that pursuant to the canons, all parishes are supposed to have updated their bylaws to bring them in compliance with the diocesan canons. I know we were behind in doing that. We completed it fairly recently at Grace. To the extent any provisions of the bylaws of a parish are inconsistent with the diocesan canons, the diocesan canons govern. So you could end up with tensions between what your parish bylaws say and what the canons say they're supposed to say. Decisions made by the vestry outside of the processes called for in the bylaws can render such decisions invalid or at least subject to challenge. The diocesan canons dictate that the parish bylaws shall define who's entitled to vote at the meetings of the parish and who is a contributor of record, prescribe the date and location of the annual meeting, or prescribe that the vestry gets to set that, provide who can call meetings, special meetings of the parish or the vestry, and that's really the rector or the wardens, or who must provide notice of meetings and what constitutes a quorum. Provide that the rector, or in his or her absence, the senior warden, shall preside at parish meetings and vestry meetings, with the junior warden presiding in the absence of the rector and senior warden at vestry meetings. Provide that the vestry shall consist of the rector, the senior warden, the junior warden, and other lay members elected by the congregation, and may include other officers. So pay attention to that. That's the crux of a vestry is the rector, the senior warden, the junior warden, and then other members that may be elected. Voting members of vestry have to be at least 18, and under the diocesan canons, the bylaws specify the number of vestry members, which should be at least 6. There's no slide for the bylaws. And because you really just need to pull them up from the diocesan website and walk through each of these pieces. The bylaws may provide that the vestry can establish committees and appoint members to those committees. They must provide that any committee established by the vestry has to have at least 2 vestry members and exercise authority delegated to it by the vestry, and that any such delegation doesn't limit the responsibilities of the vestry. So the vestry can appoint committees and it can delegate authority to those committees, but it doesn't take away the responsibility of the vestry to do that. And it's important to understand that the committees, including the executive committee, have delegated authority. So unless the bylaws specify that there's some separate authority of the executive committee is acting in concert with the rector as an advisor, but major decisions have to come back to the vestry. It's the vestry that has to vote, not the executive committee. Wardens have 4 types of legal responsibilities with regard to property and contracts, fiduciary responsibilities, responsibilities to the congregation, and responsibilities to the rector and any other clergy. So recall that pursuant to the canons of the Episcopal Church, the vestry is the agent and legal representative of the parish in all matters concerning its corporate property and the relationship of the parish to its clergy. The legal authority rests with the vestry, not the wardens. And part of the warden's job is to negotiate and oversee contracts and other formal agreements, but to bring them back to the vestry for approval. The job of both the senior warden and the junior warden is to work closely with the rector in providing overall leadership of the congregation. Similarly, both the senior warden and the junior warden are responsible for meeting regularly with the rector, individually or together, and providing leadership so the vestry can identify the mission, vision, and goals of the congregation, make and implement plans, assess programs, and celebrate achievements. And I really can't say that enough, because I'm going to talk a lot today and about structure, and I'm a lawyer, so I talk about legal responsibilities. But don't lose sight at all points of the importance of that work of the mission. I mean, ultimately, it is the job of all of us as leaders to work with the clergy to oversee and support the mission and vision of the congregation, not just the administrative piece. The vestry is the governing body of the parish. The rector, the wardens, the secretary, the treasurer, and sometimes the secretary is a clerk, different titles, but and any other officers appointed or elected pursuant to the terms of the parish bylaws are the officers of the vestry. So again, the vestry is the governing body. all of us serve as officers of that body, but with legal liability that goes associated with that. In most congregations, the senior warden is the officer who works most closely with the rector. He or she may regularly meets regularly with the rector to discuss various concerns, including the priest's well-being. She participates in planning vestry meetings, takes on administrative tasks, and is the responsible person when the rector is away. In our congregation, the senior warden was selected by the rector, but elected by the congregation. In many, but not all congregations, the junior warden is responsible for the maintenance of the property. While the wardens are not expected to know the details of every financial transaction of the congregation, it's important for the wardens to maintain an appropriate awareness of the congregation's overall physical health. So I'm going to talk about elements of financial oversight. The officers of the vestry should be working with the rector as members of a team. In larger congregations, there may be the need for executive meetings to set the agenda. In smaller congregations, the team approach may be more informal. In all situations, the wardens, as officers of the vestry, are personally liable for all financial concerns. It's in your best interest, as well as that of the congregation, to keep abreast of the following matters. The first is oversight of finances. Make sure that your congregation's financial records are audited annually. Work with your treasurer to see that a monthly financial report is presented to the vestry. At a minimum, the report should reconcile to cash. A report that includes a balance sheet is preferred. Every warden should know that the parochial report is due on March 1st of every year to the diocese. Work with your rector to complete this document on time. Second is insurance. And this is really important for your properties and for your own personal liabilities. Have your congregation's liability insurance reviewed annually. Keep records of all changes in property value. Keep records and adjust your insurance as necessary to account for the acquisition of new property, like computers and office equipment. And make sure your insurance coverage includes directors' and officers' liability coverage, which specifically covers all the officers and members of the vestry. The third is employee personnel matters. Adopt personnel policy and/or use a policy manual that is in accordance with diocesan standards and canons. Maintain current copies of all contracts with church employees, both lay and ordained. If your congregation doesn't have a policy manual, spell out the contractual arrangement with each employee in the body of his or her contract. And that can be as simple as a letter agreement, but you want to have the terms of the agreement in writing with each of your employees. And the last piece of this oversight, general oversight, is clergy health. And not surprisingly, given the story that I told you, this one is of personal sensitivity to me. Stay tuned into the spoken and unspoken needs of your clergy. If your rector looks overworked, tired, or depressed, find the opportunity to express your concerns to him or her. Urge your rector to take regular days off, holidays, and vacations. Set a tone in your congregation which honors your rector's need for personal time away from the congregation. Be understanding. I'm going to stop for a second. The slide, there aren't any more slides. So they were just there for those initial pieces. So I'm not talking from slides. And maybe that will help. I apologize if that's confusing people. Rowan, do you want to just pull them off for now?
Yep, they should be off.
Great, thank you. If your rector is experiencing serious health problems, make sure that you and your rector work with the bishop's office to obtain clergy coverage for your congregation and that the bishop is aware of the situation. Be attentive to rumor control. Discuss with your rector what's appropriate and what is not appropriate to share with the congregation. And here again, we're talking about their health. Share appropriate information with everyone at the same time to avoid telephone tag. Brush up on your communication skills. Recognize the possibility that your rector may decide to leave the congregation, may choose to retire, or may not survive extreme health problems. Be prepared for those circumstances. Maintain an open relationship with the bishop's office. Most rectors have long-term disability or retirement opportunities available to them through the church pension fund. Familiarize yourself with those procedures for obtaining long-term supply or interim clergy. In other words, don't find yourself in the position that I did. And remember that you're not expected to deal with the ramifications of these specific problems all by yourself. Use a team approach with the vestry, seek out advice as appropriate, and reach out to the bishop and the bishop's office when you need help. So all of the above are shared responsibilities of the wardens. And I spelled them out that way because each parish allocates responsibilities differently. But now I'm going to talk about some of the specific responsibilities that are often allocated separately to senior wardens and junior wardens. Senior wardens' responsibilities may include providing leadership in the congregation by demonstrating a consistently positive attitude that seeks to resolve problems, recognize accomplishments, and give thanks for those things that build community and further the mission and vision of the church. And really, that's the job of all leaders. But it's the special responsibility of the senior warden. Be available to discuss any and all concerns with the rector and maintain confidentiality where appropriate. Be available to discuss any and all concerns with members of the congregation. Avoid making hasty judgments, and avoid triangulation by encouraging complainants to speak directly to each other. Foster understanding, forgiveness, and reconciliation in cases where the rector, staff, or vestry is beleaguered or being overly criticized. Ensure that policies and procedures are in place and enforced regarding employee or volunteer misconduct. Immediately take any questions, concerns, and complaints to the rector and/or appropriate authorities. Support the rector in taking action when employees or volunteers are charged with misconduct or inappropriate behavior. And those are highly sensitive circumstances. Take action to intervene promptly with others as appropriate in the event that the rector is charged with misconduct, has problems with drugs or alcohol, or is acting inappropriately. Speak with the rector and the bishop. Petition the bishop in writing on behalf of the vestry to intervene in cases where conflict imperils the pastoral relationship between the congregation and the rector. Encourage the rector to take corrective steps as appropriate in cases where the rector is overworked, disregarding his or her health and well-being, or the health of the rector's family. And in small parishes in particular, like Grace, that's a circumstance that happens a lot where rectors don't and priests in charges don't take enough care of themselves. And it's the job of the wardens to try to help encourage and enforce some appropriate downtime for the clergy. When the congregation is without a rector, notify the bishop promptly and make provisions for worship services. Lead the congregation by ensuring that the worship services program and pastoral needs are being met. If it's not an interim situation, but if the rector is left as opposed to is on leave, that the selection process for a new rector has begun, and that employee relationships and communications with the diocese are maintained. The senior warden also is responsible for preparing the letter of agreement with the proposed new rector, which outlines mutual responsibilities and is the subject to the diocesan and bishop's approval. So that's a really long list, and we can talk about that more as we get into the questions. In congregations where the junior warden position is responsible for property management, as it was at Grace, the junior warden's responsibilities may include understanding the parish's property management and maintenance needs, working with service people and recruiting and motivating members of the congregation to take responsibility for maintenance work. Recruiting volunteers is a big deal. in most of our congregations to help maintain the grounds and upkeep of the buildings. Establishing and executing a plan for an oversight of seasonal maintenance of things like furnaces and air conditioning and plumbing and kitchen facilities. Establishing and overseeing a process for annual safety checks. Reviewing insurance needs with the treasurer and the insurance agent and revising annually as needed. And establishing and overseeing a process for obtaining the service of contractors. And then chairing a committee, if you're fortunate enough to have them, of volunteers who are overseeing any number of these, the maintenance and obligations. That's a ton of information in a very short time. Before we move to our breakout groups, I want to leave you with a few final tips from my experience and that I've gathered from talking with other senior wardens. Focus on building a relationship of trust with your rector. Pray together often. Familiarize yourself with all of the disparate ministries of the parish. That's one of the first things that I did as senior warden, was to spend time with each of the ministries at Grace. And it was incredibly helpful, as well as ultimately connecting with a ministry that I thought I would have had no connection with, that has graced me long past my service as senior warden. Get comfortable with unfinished business, incomplete projects, and slow progress. We're all volunteers. Give yourself and your fellow officers and vestry members a lot of grace. Don't try to do everything yourself. Build a team. And take every opportunity to express appreciation, encouragement, and gratitude to people who lead and serve in your congregations. Implement an annual mutual ministry review for rector and wardens, or rector and vestry. This is something we haven't done yet, but I've done it in other parishes. More than an annual evaluation, the 360-degree review is an opportunity for you and the rector and the vestry to review together your ministries and your work together in the parish. And finally, it's easy to get bogged down in administration. Regularly stop to ask, what is God calling this congregation to be? A good working partnership between ordained and lay leaders is a key ingredient in the growth of a congregation. Pay attention to the human dynamics at vestry meetings and in the life of the community. Be open and honest about the way key decisions are made in your community. Help members of the congregation to know when and how their input is welcomed and valued. And remember that you don't have to go it alone. There is help and there are resources. Use the diocesan resources, seek out the bishops for guidance, and sometimes outside help in the form of a consultant is the catalyst that helps leaders lead. Thank you. We're now going to move to breakout sessions specific to junior wardens and senior wardens to give you a chance to talk with one another. Please consider the following questions, which Rowan has included in the chat function. Or actually, you can just put the slide back up if that works better, Rowan. What in your Sunday worship have you had to let go of during the pandemic that you don't want to take back? And the second question is, what is the greatest challenge facing your parish in the next 12 months? And what gifts do you have to address that challenge?
One thing I want to make sure everyone knows is that we do have a Wardens listserv, a Wardens email distribution list. And that's a wonderful way for you to connect with other wardens around the diocese. I know sometimes when wardens have a question, they put it out on that Wardens distribution email and responses just pour back in. If you haven't been receiving any emails on that Wardens distribution list, say over the last few days, it's probably because we don't have you on it. Yeah. And that may be because we don't have a record of your election as a warden. And so we would love to get that information. You can send it to me. I will type my email address into the chat right now.
Well,
Okay, so I'm sorry that was too short. We were trying to figure out what was the right amount of time. And I know, my own experience as well, that there is no substitute for having a chance to simply brainstorm and share experiences with others. So I encourage further communications and thoughts about that for everybody here. We wanted to create the last half hour, or to leave open the last half hour of our time today to address specific questions that you had, or corporate questions that you had relating to anything that I said in the first half hour, or that's coming from your own experience at this point. And Andrew is here to answer diocesan specific questions and resource questions. And I am, as best I can, from experience, and again, both the research and the time that I've spent with other wardens. If we can open it up, you're welcome to post questions in chat, or simply to unmute yourself and ask away. Or I guess, Rowan, also raising hands. I don't do that one very well.
If you know how to digitally raise your hand, I'll keep an eye on that. If you do not, and you raise your hand in the video, we'll keep an eye out across the few screens. We're going to invite those who have typed a question in the chat to share their question in their own words. Sometimes we get a little bit more information when it's spoken rather than written. And if you would rather not speak your question, that's also okay, and we can read it out. We've already got one in from Lee. Lee, would you unmute and share your question?
I'm just trying to find out if there's a list somewhere of things we need to send in when they change. When the vestry elections change, when the parochial report is due, when I remember we sent in mutual ministry info. Periodically, I think, oh, you were supposed to send that in, but is there a list of that with general dates and who gets it? Does that make sense?
It totally does. Usually, we from the diocesan offices send out reminders when things are due. But let me highlight 3 for you right now, and I can give you the dates.
Great.
So first of all, results of elections from annual meetings should be reported as soon as possible after your annual meeting. Annual meetings for parishes take place at all different times throughout the year.
Right.
But as soon as you have results, there is a form available on the diocesan website that should be completed and submitted. That's
Okay.
one. That's one. Second is the parochial reports. Those were due March 1st. They're due March 1st of every year. And I do know that clergy, and I think wardens, as well as parish administrators, received emails from me over the last few months and last couple of weeks as a reminder of that.
Yep.
Third, every parish should have an audit done every year. And those audits should be submitted to the diocese by September of the following year. So by this coming September 2021, we should have received an audit from your parish for the year 2020.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Helps. That helps. It's just knowing ahead of time means that, we can goose people to get it done.
Absolutely.
We have a question from Roy Peterson. And Karen, I see your hand, but since this one follows up what we were just speaking about, going to jump over to Roy real quick, who has a question about the vestry election reporting form.
Yes, thank you very much. I was able to correspond briefly a couple of weeks ago and heard about the vestry election reporting form. I logged into it. I saw it. It seemed like it wanted a lot of details if you did it online, like addresses for vestry members and stuff. Is that completely necessary, or are names okay for that? I just want to make sure we're doing it correctly.
Thank you, Roy. That's a great question. I believe that we do need the contact information for, say, wardens and vestry members and so on. That's That's important for us to have on record. We don't share that information publicly, but it does allow us to contact you if we need to.
So email addresses and physical mailing addresses are what you're looking for. You don't need cell phone numbers or anything like that.
I would have thought it might include cell phone numbers, but if the form doesn't include that, that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Karen, what is your question?
My question is, I'm interested to hear any stories if people have creative ways that they have engaged their congregations in becoming more financially literate with regard to how the finances of the congregation work, and what actually is required to keep things going the way they are, and not just assuming that it's always all being taken care of by someone else, and understanding even just to note the average pledge size and have a discussion about the fact that we have very large donors at the top, for example. So if we actually got that average pledge from most of the people, it would help a lot. And just, how to engage people who are not interested in numbers normally, but obviously everyone's managing their household budget, so it's not that great a leap. But getting people interested, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think what we have done at Grace are a couple of things. One, we send out on a weekly basis. There's a newsletter that comes out on Wednesdays that's an update on things going on in the parish, as well as a monthly update, and that contains actually a report from the treasurer that is a summary of what was presented at Vestry. That's probably more numerical, but a big chunk. The two things that we do is one, to try to translate the numbers into language, because the things that you were just describing are not really numbers. They're facts. So to keep people advised on what's going on in terms of the maintenance of the church. Or so one of the ways to do it is to celebrate the people who actually are doing the ministries themselves. So that whether that's the work of the wardens or especially, the garden committee and the individuals who are helping to take care of those key ministries and the dollars that are required to do that. The other is that specifically in the context of our annual pledge campaign, that we do very regular updates during services on the status of the pledge, and leading up to it. Sometimes we do summaries of what the demographic of our giving looks like, and where and so how pledges spread out. That obviously there are no numbers attached, no people attached to it, but where we've got the big pledges at the top, and a bunch of them at much smaller pledges, and not a lot in the middle, where which is sort of the true bread and butter and sustenance of most parishes, but trying to distill that into words as opposed to purely numbers, and talking about what that means to the congregation.
It might also be helpful for folks to know where the money is going, the missions being supported, and if possible, the results and the outcome and the impact on the community.
I agree with all of that. We are going through a serious transition right now. One, we don't have a rector or a priest in charge. We have a long-term supply priest right now, but we also voted in a brand new treasurer who is taking the finances in a whole, taking it to the next level, which is fantastic. We're having every second Sunday we donate, because we do live stream right now, and that is for announcements. I don't do the announcements for second Sunday. I bring on the treasurer, and he gives an update of where we are with the finances. Then he holds monthly town hall meetings So he's like breaking everything down, because I am one of those people, numbers hurt my head. And so when you start talking about numbers, there's that glazed look. But now that since becoming senior warden, it's very necessary for me to understand and learn and see where our finances are. And we are in bad shape, but he's breaking it down so that we understand where we are and what it takes to where we need to be. So that's been very helpful.
You give the amounts of the high and the low?
We have given ranges.
Yeah, we do too.
Another thing I was thinking of is we could say, all right, the top 5 pledges are providing this percentage, which is a high percentage of our entire pledge amount.
Yeah, that's right. But understanding the demographics of giving, as well as the demographics of your population, on any other number of metrics, is really valuable, clearly to the vestry and the rector or priest in charge, but really for the congregation too, as you're talking about ministry and what it is that you want to be able to accomplish, and what it costs to do that.
Isn't one of the goals to have full participation, regardless of sum?
Sorry.
Yes, I mean, to be a voting member of the congregation, you are supposed to be contributing. I know in our congregation, we have, we do some gymnastics around people who we know are regular plate givers, but who have not quite moved yet to the formal pledge stage. And so there's that's a physical monitoring process, because we're little and we can do that. But it is it's a standard, for voting, is that so it would certainly be a goal to have everybody there. Some people can do that in different ways.
If I may, go ahead.
I like the idea of keeping the congregation informed about how the pledges are doing. And this also letting them know that, say, half of these pledges, half of this comes from a big donor. There are some people who give their whole year's pledge one time, and the giving might look really large at a particular moment, but we need to kind of break it down that way. What we are planning to do is to have what we're calling a Replete Sunday, where we will focus on that, focus on pledging and having people repledge, so that we help to increase the amount of pledges. One of the things we started out with was the pledges. The pledges really kind of kept things going during the pandemic. But then at the end of the year, where people were pledging, it was the pledges were just half of what was pledged for 2020. And so that is a big problem we're starting with. So we're concentrating now that things are getting better. This is what we're foreseeing, that people will be bold in pledging and increasing their pledges and so on. We have a running comment in our bulletin each Sunday too, that's encouraging people to pledge. And I think what we should do, and I'm going to bring this up with our vestry, and that we should add to that comment saying what the pledges look like so far, what happened in last month, and so on.
Yeah.
And that would help, I think.
Yes.
And we started this thing of holding town hall meetings where the whole congregation is invited and we have conversations. So that's some of the stuff that we could have at town hall meetings too.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Some of that depends on whether your pledge campaign is an ongoing one, or whether, I mean, in our parish, it's a period of time in the fall, and and then so people make their pledges, and then what we're really tracking is the payment cycle of their pledge, which for many people runs in lots of different cycles. And there are people who pay their entire pledges at a single payment, which makes it more challenging sometimes from a budget perspective, and people, who pay them on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, or et cetera. And those are cash flow issues for the parish.
Yes.
Andrew, were you trying to say something? Okay.
No, I'm good.
All right.
We do have a few hands raised. Deanie's has been up the longest. And then Jeffrey, Carol, and Sewell.
Okay.
Hi, I actually was gonna, it was along those same lines. I wanted to comment on the, the pledging and some of the ideas that you guys are sharing. And, I was agreeing with some of them, and especially, with our new treasurer coming on, and the creative ways that he's getting the congregation involved. And we're doing ongoing pledges, and we've established, like, we've dusted off our website, and we've put a lot of work into, so during our live stream services, we can post the link on our church forum, our WhatsApp forum, to say, please, go on the website, or you can just click this link, pay your plate offering, or go on the website, pay your pledge or pay your plate offering. We have buttons to do all of that. So we've really stepped it up a little bit, stepped it up a notch to increase the giving, and creative ways to get, especially the folks who had been asking, can we Zelle, can we Cash App, and all of that. And we're looking into all of those platforms as well for a way to get more participation, more increased giving, easier for some folks. Now we still have the, send it in the mail. I'll drop it off at the church. We still get those as well. So yeah, whatever works for them is what we say.
Yes, same at our church.
Yeah.
We have a something on our website where people go and they do their pledges or any donation that they would like to do. And also people send checks in. We have to have that mixture because some of our congregation, checks are better for them. So we want to be able to include everybody's ability in getting this money. Our treasurers go and collect the money from the post office and so on, collect the checks from the post office. And of course, we would get our money straight into our via PayPal. People go to the website, there's a donate button that you press and you do what you want to do. So we're kind of similar to what we just heard. And we do encourage our members to understand that you can pledge, renew your pledge anytime, increase your pledge, even if you pledge, say, $50, anytime you're making your pledge and you can manage it, put more. This is this is how we encourage. So we're working on it. And I have a question. Is there any other thing that people are doing? And I realize that we kind of all in the same boat. Any other ideas for raising funds for managing the church? Any ideas? Any other ideas that we might benefit from? Or like for us, we're trying to get our renters back. We've been renting our hall to people because of the pandemic. We don't get rental fees. We're looking to open up our parking lot. We're going to have a birthday party, a 3-year-old birthday party on our parking lot in June. We're looking to open up our parking lot for stuff like that. And anything that could happen on a parking lot, we're looking to rent about. Or what other things people might be thinking of doing? Can you share? We need some more ideas. And any other things that, yeah.
Ron, I was gonna say something, but I realized there are other hands up, so I was giving them precedence.
Maybe you could type that into the chat if you have thoughts about that. And so we could keep moving on the questions. That'd be great. Thank you.
Next up for questions, we have Jeffrey.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want two very quick questions. One is, who is the principal contact for wardens at the diocese?
That would be Andrew.
Andrew, okay.
I'm happy to be the primary contact for all of you, yes.
All right, all right. And secondly, this is sort of weird. If you have a rector who's taking a 2-week vacation out of state, is what is the line of responsibility there? Is that person, do you want to make sure they have a true vacation and just don't be bothered with anything? What's your advice on that? And also, what's the legal ramifications of that? I stumped you.
Well, so I'd be happy to answer that. I would say that every clergy person should have a letter of agreement, and those letters of agreement will specify a certain amount of time off every year, and that time off should be time off. Clergy need an opportunity to unplug and rest and rejuvenate themselves. So I would encourage all of you to allow clergy to have that space. That time off will enable the clergy to best serve you and your congregation.
And during that time, I mean, before you with the clergy are arranging for supply to make sure that the services are continuing, and that somebody is covering pastoral emergencies, and otherwise the leadership of the parish remains with the warden, with the vestry and the wardens.
Thank you.
Okay, our next question is from Sewell.
I didn't actually have a question. I just wanted to comment on Karen's question about making people aware of what it costs to run a church. Transparency is a big thing. Is a really important thing because, like at our church, we publish the budget monthly after the vestry meeting, after the vestry sees the budget for the month, and it's available to the congregation so they can see what the expenses are. They can see what monies are coming in. We have it in the budget. It has percentages, so you can see the percentage of pledges for what's budgeted for the year has come in. You can see where we are on expenses for the year. Like if you're 6 months in and the expenses are at 90%, you know you're in trouble. It's just transparency. I mean, because people won't be aware of what it costs to run the church if they never see the numbers. But I would be careful too, talking about average pledges and things like that, because say you got somebody who pledges 10 grand a year, and you got somebody that pledges $1, and it might say, well, your average pledge is $5,000, but to the person maybe that person who's given $1, that's all they can give, and they're given, how does that make them feel? So you could publish, where you are percentage wise on pledges or something like that, but I would be careful with publishing average pledge and things like that. So.
Yeah, I agree with you, Stu, because I think there can be a disincentive if people think, well, what I get doesn't matter when we want full participation. And I think one of my thoughts was that if people see the average pledge number, that's misleading if in fact 5 major donors are causing that average to go way up above from what the mean pledge is, for example. But you've just made me think of an idea that maybe we should have a trivia question every week.
Yeah, I think, like you just said, the average pledge is misleading. I think the median pledge is probably a better number, but yeah, publishing pledge numbers, I think, is not a good idea. It's my opinion. But.
And no matter how clear you make all those numbers, somebody will go, I don't understand this.
It's okay if I don't understand. I'm just looking for interest.
Yes.
But I think your point about transparency is a critical one. And I think Elizabeth had posted in the chat, some recommendations about narrative budgets, and which is what I was trying to articulate, not very clearly, because being able to translate those into narratives really helps the parish to understand less what a balance sheet looks like than what the actual costs are to keep the lights on in the parish, which at the moment is a weird thing because we're not there. But we still have to do that. We have to keep our buildings maintained. And then most importantly, what to sustaining our ministries and supporting our clergy.
Deanie, do you have a question or a comment?
I wanted to switch topics and ask how I posted some other comments in response to what the other lady was asking about, but I wanted to ask how new wardens are being received in the parish, like what your challenges are so far that you've been in office. Like what has been your biggest challenge?
Well, for me, my biggest challenge is what we need to do. Having a plan for going forward beyond the time that has been estimated, which is going far beyond June. All of us are pretty much, now I've been in the vestry, but as I said, we recruited people and most of them have never been in the vestry, but what we're doing is learning together. We're learning together, helping each other, keeping each other engaged. I'm trying to have, or we are trying to have all our vestry members involved with something. Having them be, for example, joining the various committees and so that we have in our church, being a member on one of those committees or more, so that we have a connection with our parish, and having our vestry members, for example, when there was the vestry training, what I did, I asked one of the people, I was at training myself, but I asked one of the people who was there to liaise with the others and prepare a report to give at our next meeting, which she did. So I'm trying to keep all members, we're trying to keep all members engaged in helping us do what it is that we have to do. Our treasurers are also new, and we have a previous treasurer who is working with them, showing them the ropes. Those are some of the challenges. We have a new property chair also, who has been doing his bit and being helped by our junior warden, of course. And we have a property committee of including the property chair and the junior warden, two other members of the congregation. One of them is a vestry member, and one of them is our sexton, who is involved there. So we do have a sexton, which is good, and he is part of our property chair. He's looking after the property, and as I said, my biggest challenge is trying to get the ducks in a row here concerning running things. And this is why I would like to hear what other people are thinking of doing in light of that. We've got some ideas, you know, as I said, the working on the pledges, working on getting membership up, working on trying to get our rentals to come back, connecting with them and telling them, look, yes, you can come back. We don't know if they've gone to somebody else. We're trying to get them back, and we're trying to solicit new renters so that when things open up, we would, and we're hoping soon with the vaccine and everything, we would start to get our income increased so that we could do what it is that we need to do. We're looking at oh, I've forgotten some of the stuff, but we have some things in mind, but I'm really wanting to know some other stuff.
Thank you for that. We are running, we were up against the end of the time that you have promised us. I really wanted to speak to Elizabeth's question about leadership transitions, but before we do that, I want to turn it over to Andrew to add a few things about leadership going forward.
Yes, thank you all so much. This has been a very rich conversation. Though I feel like we've only scratched the surface and there's a lot more that we all could talk about. And so I just wanted to ask a couple of questions about how we could continue this conversation. We would be happy to continue convening wardens on some sort of regular basis, whatever might feel right to all of you, whether it's quarterly or once or twice a year. Those meetings could happen regionally so that all of you would have an opportunity to talk with wardens in your region of the diocese. Or it could happen more broadly, as this meeting is, with wardens from all across the diocese. So I'm just wondering if you would have a preference. You know, do you like this big group? Would you like to meet in smaller groups within your region? And are there specific topics that you all might like to discuss amongst yourselves as wardens? You know, we focused quite a bit on finances during today's session. We could have meetings specifically on that, but if you have some thoughts, if you could type those into the chat, that would be great. I'll also put my email into the chat again. You could send me an email, but would just like to know what would be helpful for you going forward from today. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And I hope that you'll put succession planning, leadership transitions on that list because it is a really big topic for everybody, I think. Because at the moment, I think it's tremendously personality driven, and you know, rectors, wardens, and junior wardens, senior wardens can have big personalities, and you know, and with really different, you know, from one warden to another, their approach to things can be really different, and so the willingness to listen or to learn from the prior leaders can be different. And can be difficult. I think developing certain policies and procedures that you carry forward, and some of the resources that we talked about today and that are available in the toolkit on the the website, the diocesan website, are really good starting points that can include the job descriptions, so that you have and you know, you can tailor them down to something that is more narrow, but you know, that there's a lot of room within any of those. And it's things that you can use as resources that you agree on as a vestry and with your rectors, you know, as the starting point, and then you deal with the personalities of the individuals. Those individual parish-driven manuals, no matter, you know, whether they're little or big, can create some continuity as you know, between leaders, and as a good start. But I think that's a really important topic on an ongoing basis for what we could be doing collectively and individually to create better transitions, and that can only serve our parish as well. We are past our time. I want to thank everybody for participating today. This was great to have so many of you here and actively engaged. I know that we threw a lot at you. I apologize for the confusion about my PowerPoint slides, which I was not talking from. We will include those in what gets sent to you afterwards, because they just have some of the reference points that I was using. But again, the toolbox has in it sample just job descriptions going, which are some of the things that I was articulating. It has reference. It has the canons. It has a copy of the Diocese of Maryland has put together an entire manual for wardens that is specific to the Diocese of Maryland, which is a little different than ours, although they're similar. But there's some great information there. There's an article included there that's very provocative that talks about what church might look like for us going forward, as we learn we take the lessons that we've learned during the pandemic and in the virtual world and bring and combine them with being able to be back together in our parishes. Really great starting points and tools for you to sit with, because you really do have to sit with them both and think about how they apply in your individual parishes. And again, I really strongly encourage you to take out your bylaws, review them against the diocesan canon, so to see if they need updating, and then make sure that you're living into those in your ministries together. Thank you so much. Andrew, were there anything else that we need to cover?
No, thank you all again for being here. And
Thank
please,
you.
if you need anything, just send me an email. We're happy to help and support you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye-bye.